I'm Professor Ginsburg. This is sex discrimination and the law.
I really felt compelled to tell Justice Ginsburg's story because I have felt adversity and discrimination, and I immediately responded to it. And it was a visceral response. It was a response of, I have to make this movie. I have to tell this story.
It's a female character who is fiercely devoted to what she does, but at the same time, it explored the fuller sense of her life.
If the law discriminates on the basis of sex, then how will women and men ever become equals?
When I first got this script, I was really excited. I thought it was great that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was sort of coming to life on the pages.
It is a powerful story of what individuals can do. It wants to be real. It wants to deal with a sense of frustration and pain and joy and discovery.
Section 214 of the tax code assumes a caregiver has to be a woman.
This is sex-based discrimination against a man.
Justice Ginsburg approved the script. Her nephew, Daniel Stiepelman, wrote the script.
I got to know my Aunt Ruth for the first time. I called and I said, I have this idea. I'd like your permission, and if possible, I'd love your help. And she said, and I quote, if that's how you think you'd like to spend your time. And so then I went down to DC and we spent several days together. And then as the writing process continued, I would send Ruth drafts along the way. And she would say, oh, Daniel, I'm in the middle of reading the Affordable Care Act. Can you call me back in 30 minutes? The first note that I ever got from her was, page 1, it says that I was wearing high heel shoes, but in those days I used to walk to Harvard, so I never would have worn high heel shoes. That doesn't make any sense. And it was that sort of level of detail.
We know her on the outside, but finding who she was on the inside was a great journey that we all went on.
Section 214 of the tax code discriminates on the basis of sex and is therefore unconstitutional.
Mimi is extraordinarily intelligent, but it's both a intellectual intelligence and an emotional intelligence. And you need both to do this movie.
What could have more impact than that?
With Mimi, there's an openness to collaborate. She leads very effectively and keeps everyone together, but also at the same time lets it breathe, lets people have their own ideas, opinions, throw things in, try things out.
Change minds first, then change the law. She doesn't fix what ain't broke. She lets you really find your way, and she gives direction when she needs to.
Okay, we'll get it. Felicity Jones really embodied Ruth Bader Ginsburg in a real, honest way. She found her reality. She wasn't doing an impersonation. We wanted her to find her essence, and she did.
It's a little more involved than that.
When you're playing a real person, it comes with an enormous responsibility to understand who that person is, why they behave like they behave, but also on a more minute level, do they wear nail varnish, and what time do they get up in the morning, and all those little details are in some ways the most fun.
Felicity's one of the most dedicated actresses I've ever met. She just takes it so seriously, and she brings so much respect to this, especially to Justice Ginsburg.
I am going to figure out every question those judges can possibly ask me, and I'm going to have answers for all of them.
We wanted it to be very, very true to her, because the more true you are to the subject, and the more beautiful it is, because the specificity is what makes something so truthful, and therefore enjoyable to watch. I was very fortunate to meet Justice Ginsburg, and we met at her apartment in Washington. The key with meeting Ruth was that she would feel comfortable with Army and I taking on this story and doing justice to the justice.
Whoa, cool!
Justice Ginsburg. He gave me a book of his recipes.
When we were shooting, Army had a party for us all, and he cooked 5 different recipes from Marty's recipes. It was an incredible experience, all of us together, the actors, producers, Army cooking, Marty's food that Ruth has been eating her entire life. And it just felt like, wow, this is really a special moment.
My first conversations with Mimi were great. We just sort of outlined and discussed what we thought about Martin and who he was and what she wanted to see and what she felt like was the nature of his character and how we would sort of best bring it to screen.
Marty was the life of the party. He was full of jokes, he was full of humor. He was the magnet that everybody came to.
Guys, get in here, we need a minute.
Shooting the movie in 34 days, finding the right locations, finding the right color palette, and the combination of your DP, your production designer, and your costume designer is what makes a movie feel like one feeling. We shot the film in Montreal, so we had to create New York City, so we've done set extensions.
We've really mined visuals and the architecture of the area in such a way that even the locals are like, wow, that looks like New York.
Everything was period correct. Everything between her costume and our sets and our hand props, the typewriters we used, they were the typewriters Justice Ginsburg used. So everything felt very authentic.
We researched very heavily the width of the lapels and the ties, and the collars are both a little bigger. Fabrics completely different. The polyesters of the 70s will never die. Mimi wanted a film that was very realistic.
Ruth has seen the film. I showed it to her in DC, and Justice Ginsburg thought the movie was magnificent. That's a quote. And she, over the top, loved it. She felt we got her work right in the women's rights movement, and that was supremely important to her. I think when people see the film, they'll feel inspired, and I think it's a very aspirational film. I think it will move people to question, what can I do with my life? What can I do to make the world a better place? How can I become who I'm meant to be?
The word woman does not appear even once in the U.S. Constitution.
Nor does the word freedom, Your Honor.
Go in there and let the judges see the Ruth Ginsburg I know.
The movie is one of the great love stories of all time. Justice Ginsburg had a very long marriage that was so full of love and partnership and equality, and really spoke to our film and spoke to the metaphor of the movie, equality.
Martin supported her at a time when men weren't necessarily as supportive of women as they should have been, particularly in a household with children.
Her husband got testicular cancer at age 25. She not only went to her classes, she went to his classes and nursed him to health.
They didn't limit themselves by being these conventional 50s husband and wife, man and woman. And they were throwing all of that up in the air and going, no, that doesn't work for us.
Martin subverted all of the sort of generally accepted gender rules at the time. He was the one who'd spent most of the time cooking and caring for the kids.
Whoa! Cool!
Marty said once in an interview that the greatest thing he did in his life was let Ruth be Ruth.
Her life, her marriage, her children informed who she is as a judge.
I asked her, how did you know Marty was the one? And she said, I was dating somebody and we were playing charades and he was just an idiot. And so how could I not marry Marty when he was so charming and so full of life and so smart? And so out of that conversation, we put a scene in where we see her playing charades with a very smart Marty.
She actually broke up with someone for being bad at charades.
It's a beautiful relationship because it's two people who did something really hard and did it together. And in the process, they really, changed the country and changed the world.
Armie and Felicity have incredible chemistry together. They both have great senses of humor, which helps to get through long days of production. They respect each other in the way I think that Ruth and Marty respected each other as professionals, and that's something you can't fake.
When I watch old footage of them, it's rooted in laughing. They just make each other laugh their heads off. There was just real friendship as well as a romantic relationship and respect, absolute respect for each other.
Their relationship was built on deep love, equality, exchanges of ideas. It was absolutely, truly incredible. They found each other. I think they were the lucky ones.
Discrimination on the basis of sex is legal.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a true revolutionary. She has a fire in her belly, but her skill is in changing the law bit by bit and changing society's perception of the law so that great, great changes could happen.
Justice Ginsburg's story is so relevant today, more relevant than ever. Her legacy speaks to the Me Too movement and to the cultural conversations of equal rights.
Before Ruth Bader Ginsburg and after were two very different places in terms of gender equality in America.
When I was a kid, I had the sense that my Aunt Ruth had done big, important things, that she had changed the country. When you think of people changing the world in movies and the ones you hear about in school, they're always the people standing up in front of the crowd making a big noise. You need those people. You need the loud people. But you also need the people who are just going to sit down, put their heads down, and get to work.
She was one of 9 women who was attending Harvard at that time.
Ruth graduated law review, top of her class from Harvard, and then ultimately from Columbia, and was turned down by every law firm in New York for a job.
One of her first and biggest gender cases in terms of starting to turn the tide was protecting the rights of men who were caregivers at home who were denied a deduction by the IRS.
It was a case that overturned a century of gender discrimination. It affected so many laws that we today take for granted. Jury duty, having credit cards in our names.
We are asking you to respect the right of the country to change.
It's the beginning of the revolution of men and women being equal and fighting for that.
That was perfect. Her moral compass is bang on true north. She studied hard, worked hard, and made a difference wherever she could.
I'm hoping that seeing how that journey evolved and how difficult it was and how many women fought and how many women are still fighting, I hope that it will be thought-provoking for women.
It's not over. It's just beginning.
We've gotten so far, and to know who we have to thank for that is huge.
Behind the scenes of our everyday experiences, there are people who are creating laws that dictate the way we live our lives.
In part because of what Ruth achieved, we have such great freedom, and I just feel so grateful that we're in such changed times because of her.